All right, Yevamos Daf Ches. Where do we stand in Yevamos? So we are still trying to understand why the pasuk Aleha is needed to teach us the 15 ervas. What would we have thought? Why would we think that it would be okay for one of the 15 ervas to do ibam, to marry the woman whose husband had passed away and left her childless? Right. So. So we left off yesterday's daf by saying, well, you may have thought like Ula, this concept of Misha Ishtri, which means that if there are two prohibitions, in the case of Ula, it explained, let's say you're a Metzora and you're a Tivol Yom, meaning you saw an emission and you dipped in the mikvah, but you still haven't waited, it's still not nightfall yet. So you have two prohibitions. So we learn this concept of like maybe if we lift the first one, the second one also lifts as well. And see yesterday's daf to understand that a little bit more, yesterday's video. So we open up today's daf by saying you cannot really compare to that case, or Ula's case of Misha Ishtri by Mitzora. You can't really apply that here. By the case of a situation where a brother, let's say someone marries his wife, and then his brother marries her sister, and then the first man passes away. So now you have two prohibitions, right? Because first of all, the wife, or the brother is not allowed to marry this woman because it's Eshes Ach, it's his brother's wife. And the second prohibition is that it's also, because then the surviving brother, will be married to two sisters, which is also usher. So we wanted to say maybe that when you get married to one, the other one is lifted, but we end up saying you can't really compare the two cases. Additionally, it's possible where there's no overlap. I'm not going to jump into it, but either way, we reject this idea of Misha Ishtri, and as a result, we are still searching for reasons why the pasuk of Aleha is necessary to teach us that the 15 ervas are patur from Yibam. So we move on in the daf to just bring up three other reasons why this may be the case. The first one being, if there's a case where the brother's wife dies, where the brother marries a wife, then he dies, and then the brother, I think we mentioned this case before, then after the brother dies, his brother marries the wife's sister. So we would think that since the brother's wife prohibition was lifted when he died, the Yavam's marriage to the Yavam's sister does not interfere with the mitzvah of Yibam. But the Pasuk Aleh teaches us that yes, it still interferes, and that's no longer considered a valid, and it's not Yibam. Then we have another option, which is called the Hekesh of Rabbeinu Yonah, which means there's a Pasuk that says, Ki kol asher yasem yikol to'avos eileh, which means that we can compare, that's the last part of the Pasuk, so it says, Mikol Tovei Se'ela, meaning all the ervas. One of the ervas is if is marrying your brother's wife, but so we would think that just like that is permitted, so too all the 15 ervas are permitted, right? But that's the one example that is allowed, so it's an exception. So we need this pasuk aleh to teach us that even though your brother's wife is permitted to you, because that's normally ibam, however, the other ervas are not permitted. That's option number 2. Then option number 3 is Rava brings us up that we need this pasuk of Aleh to teach us that saros, that co-wives, are also forbidden, because although we know ervas, we don't necessarily know that the saros, the co-wives of the ervas, are also forbidden from doing ibum. So that's what it teaches us. And then we ask, well, didn't we learn this already from Eina say dochelos ese shepakaris, right? That was the last few daf we were talking about this concept. We say, yeah, but Aleh teaches us not just that saras are forbidden during Yibam, but actually the opposite, that they are permitted. You're allowed to marry co-wives that are permitted to you outside of Yibam under normal circumstances. So that's that. Then for a bit, Rami Bar Chama and Rava duke it out a little bit. They go back and forth. Rami says, well, according to you, maybe I can use that logic to show that I can marry the 15 ervas normally. And he proves there, Rava defends himself, and there's a bit of a struggle there in the daf. And then we we move on and we finish the daf by going back to, or we're done with that discussion about trying to find the right fit for the pasuk of Aleha. Now it makes sense for the reason that we described. And now we just go to analyze the brisa a little bit, which is, the brisa says likacha, because it says not lakach, it says lakcha. And it doesn't say yibum, it says yivma. So we learn from that according, Rebbe says this, that we forbid co-wives and arayos. So we ask, where do you learn anything about co-wives? According to Rebbe, he says ulikacha means at any time two wives are equally if there are two equal choices, then they're both equally permitted. If one is allowed and one is not, then they're both equally they're both forbidden. You don't say one is allowed, one is not. And the case of the Yivma says tsaras are only forbidden about Yibam. Otherwise, it's totally fine. The Rabbanan, on the other hand, say likacha means after Yibam. Once Yibam happens, she belongs to him. Meaning that you can't do chalitza once you do Yibam. Once it happens, then you have to give a get, basically. It's a real marriage. And what do Rabbanan learn from the Yivma? They learn that it's also valid. He can do Yibam against her will. If she doesn't want to do it, then the husband or the brother still has the ability to coerce her to do Yibam. Lastly, we finish the daf by saying, well, if Rebbe doesn't learn the arayos from the pasuk of Aleha, right? Because we just said that the Rebbe learned arayos from ulikacha and Yivma. So then, what does Rebbe do with the pasuk Aleha? So we end off by saying, what does Rebbe do with it? Rather, he teaches us that Beis Din only needs to bring, this is a different topic, but they only need to bring the par helem davar shel tzibur if it's similar to the case of Eshes Ach, meaning it's something where if you did it intentionally, you get kares. If you did it accidentally, you get a chatas. And tomorrow's daf is going to dive a little bit deeper into this concept of par helem davar shel tzibur, where we learn it from the pasuk, and take it from there. Have an amazing day.